A gladiator-style battle of foam and function for you today, people. The Starship Enterprise of running shoes. The Nike Air Zoom Alphafly Next Percent 2 versus the rest. Part 1. EDDBUD here, thanks for joining me on the channel. It is much appreciated. If you've yet to do so, hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications of when I roll out the new videos for you. You don't want to miss out. You'd feel like a fool. Also help the channel out by giving this video a thumbs up like and also sharing it with your running buddies. Hit me with a super thanks if you've got a particular question you want answered pronto. It really does help out the channel. So first up on this showdown of copious cushion and outrageous outsole is the Adidas ADIZERO Primex. It seems only right to compare this monstrous midsole up against the Alphafly Next Percent 2. In my size, I've got about 46mm of stack height here in the heel. Just to clarify, I measure that inside the shoe, so I have some calipers I have modified, so I'm not measuring the outside of the shoe. That isn't how you do it. And I got 56mm here in the ADIZERO Primex. These are two of the most compressive and cushion models out there on the market right now. Of course, one is race legal for elites to utilise in championship events, and one is not. Doesn't matter for the rest of us, we can use whatever we like really, no one's going to pull us up or anything. No one's going to get their laser beams out and check that our midsoles are the correct stack height. I suggest the Primex is somewhat more forgiving here if you're going to want to get out there on some tired legs. That's where the Primex sort of comes in. I don't think anybody's going to utilise this one for some sort of event or course or route where you've got to make loads of bends, turns and stuff. It just isn't really designed for that. If you want to run in a straight line or on some very smooth road surfaces, this is the shoe for you. I think in a mid to a forefoot it's a little bit more forgiving as well. You've got those rods plus some part plates and blades underneath. Doesn't feel quite as jarring perhaps as the feeling you get in the Alphafly Next Percent 2. I think it's a more impactful ride here, although I'd suggest after more miles it's beginning to flex a tiny bit. It's not quite as abrasive perhaps as the initial runs. I think both shoes are great at marathon-like paces, speeds and efforts, and both have got some superb outsole designs. I have to say the outsole on the Alphafly Next Percent 2 has been superb up to now. On pretty much everything I've tried it feels great. Traction is really on point. I mean, the Primex has proved very durable. I think I've got about 100 miles into those and there's no sign of wear whatsoever. No doubt the Alphafly Next Percent 2 is the more stable of these two shoes. The Primex is just way more narrow right across the board. Aside from the Puma DEVIATE Nitro Elite that I'm going to cover later, I think it is pretty much the narrowest shoe overall in terms of forefoot and heel. I found these really great and stable when it comes to taking quite fast turns. They really do have quite an advantage over the first version of the Alphafly. I think if I had to pick one shoe right now between these two, it would be the Alphafly Next Percent 2. I think it's got a little bit over the Primex right now. I'm finding it great on all paces that I've tried so far. Just a little bit lighter as well than the Primex and a hell of a lot more stable, though vastly more costly. Up next is the Vaporfly Next Percent. I forgot how light the original version of this shoe is. It feels like I've got hardly anything in my hand. There's about 50 grams difference between this and the Alphafly Next Percent 2. I mean, it really is quite substantial, which does make me wonder whether this is actually still the GOAT of the super shoes. I did find the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 a little bit heavier than the original version. I think though this year Nike are trying to provide some more definitive sort of purpose to each of these two shoes, trying to classify them a little bit more. This one perhaps for the 5k through to the half marathon, and I'd suggest if you're a lighter runner you could probably get away with using this easily for the marathon distance, whereas they're very much setting this shoe up as the marathon option, though I'm finding it great at just about anything. Certainly a much lower weight, a less present upper here as well on the original Vaporfly Next Percent. Let's not forget the great success that many runners have found using this shoe at the marathon distance. Some of the best times ever have been set with the version 1. I'm thinking Berlin a few years ago. So what's the key advantages in using this shoe over this one? Well, I mean, you've got a similar drop now between the two shoes of 8mm, though there's a much slimmer heel in the Vaporfly Next percent. 8.1 centimeters compared to 10.2 in the Alphafly. There's a huge amount more here in the heel, so you're going to get a much more stable ride perhaps if you're spending more time back there. This shoe really comes to the fore, spending more time in this midfoot area here rather than landing back in the heel. Just want to kind of avoid this area. There's overall less upper to contend with here in the Vaporfly Next percent, and I think if you're a triathlete, this one's probably going to appeal a little bit more. It's just so much easier to get on foot. That's going to put people off who are triathletes trying out the Alphafly Next percent too. I do find it a little bit weird that obviously the little quote from Bowerman there, a shoe must be three things: it must be light, comfortable, and it's got to go the distance. Yet Nike have progressively made some of these shoes a lot heavier, so it does go against Bowerman's whole theory and philosophy almost. Of course, the Vaporfly Next percent 2 comes in at about £235 over here in the UK. At the moment, I think you can actually pick it up for about 165 Earth credits. They've got them all discounted right now, which does suggest there might be something coming on the horizon. Even at retail price, it's like £40 less than the Alphafly Next percent 2. I'd suggest it's a good time to pick up some pairs of the Vaporfly Next percent right now. Not everybody seems to get on with the setup that there is in the Alphafly. Some people just find it a little bit too jarring. That's why I think that many runners at races I've been to recently have opted for the Vaporfly over the Alphafly, especially with the changes that we've seen in the new version of the shoe. I think personally for me, if I could only have one on the desert island, it would probably have to be the Vaporfly Next percent. Next comparison is against the ASICS MetaSpeed Sky Plus. Now bear in mind that this is a size 10.5 and I'm comparing it up against the size 11 Alphafly Next percent 2. I think we've got a good 45 grams or so difference in favour of the ASICS shoe. Considerably lighter on foot and certainly a more nimble feeling shoe. Certainly less assistive, put it that way. Feels like you're doing a little bit more of the work, but in a good way. Like you're a bit more in control of what's going on. I think the extra foam padding and the altered drop that we have in the Alphafly Next percent 2 kind of make it a little bit more like the Tempo Next percent if you've tried that out. Something more capable of training perhaps than we've had before with that series. Certainly the upper's closer to the Tempo Next percent for sure. I think ZOOMX and Flight Foam Turbo really aren't quite the same thing. Certainly feels a little bit more a rebound type foam here in the ASICS shoe, but I feel this one's somewhat more refined. There's just a little bit more technique gone into it, a little bit more thought. The Alphafly Next percent 2 does very much feel like a bit of a remix. They've kind of altered the volume levels and thrown in a tacky badge, a bit like you got in the 80s with all those sort of remix 12 inches that you could buy. Slightly more refined ride, a little bit smoother here without that concentration on the AirPods. Just find it perhaps a little bit more of a pleasant and natural ride in the MetaSpeed Sky Plus. Grip on both shoes is absolutely exceptional. On cornering and turns, the traction is tremendous. There is of course that colossal price difference between the MetaSpeed Sky Plus and the Alphafly Next percent 2. I think if you want something that's a little bit lower profile and perhaps, dare I say it, a traditional feel, not that this is traditional by any stretch, I think you'll probably get a little bit more out of this one if you're racing some 5 to 10Ks, maybe some half marathons too, and I found it supremely durable so far. So it's hard to recommend the Alphafly Next percent 2 if you can only have one. I'd probably pick this, and it smells better. Last comparison today is up against the Puma DEVIATE Nitro Elite. Now this is a secondary pair that Puma have sent me over to test out. It's actually in a size 11, which is slightly larger than the one I had before. I think that was a 10.5. There might be a little bit more wiggle room here in the toes. Not that the other one was unusable, it felt great in fact. Even in a size 11, this one only comes in marginally heavier than the original Vaporfly Next percent. Got about 229 grams here, bang on the money, 8 ounces. That lovely soft Nitro Elite foam in the Puma is a real favourite of mine, and again it feels like far more of a traditional running shoe than the Alphafly Next percent 2 ever will. A very stable and grounded shoe with a far less present upper. It's just less of it there, and a stellar lockdown from the simple lacing system. Very minimal yet still highly cushioned, and I think that a lot of runners will really lap that up. like hungry kittens. I mean, the weight difference surely going to be of an advantage if you're running a marathon. I mean, you're close to 50 grams difference, and if you're taking into account Barrowman's theory, you know, reducing the weight down, how it's going to save you over the course of a marathon, then well, this one's the winner, isn't it? It's going to provide loads of cushion then. If your legs are strong, you've been doing lots of training, do you need all the extra cushion that you have in the Alphafly Next Percent 2? You could say perhaps the Puma will really shine as well at those lower distance events, the 5Ks and 10Ks, though it cannot be denied that in testing recently, the Alphafly Next Percent 2 helped me to some really quick 400 and 200 meter repeats. Is it worth the almost £100 price difference? I can't say it is really. I think it's impossible to say that a shoe is worth £275 or whatever. I mean, think of all the extra shoes that you could buy if you picked up the Puma DEVIATE Nitro Elite over this one. Get a couple of pairs of the Energy 4 from Reebok, maybe a pair of recovery shoes or something, or some energy gels. So I think if I had to have one shoe that I was going to run the majority of my racing in, I'd probably pick this one over the Alphafly. Again, I think lighter runners just probably don't need all that extra cushion. I think this has got pretty much all you need. That's all of my comparisons for today, guys. I will have a part 2 coming up with some additional shoes. If you've got any questions or observations, please post them down in the comments. Musical interlude today comes from the artist Logic with their new album Vinyl Days. Do be aware there's some explicit language on this one. It's a hip-hop album from 2022, so probably going to expect a little bit of that, but just be careful. Really enjoying the track Tetris. Super chunky drums here. It does sound like the drummer could have been performing them using 2 chunky Kit Kats instead of drumsticks. Some really nice changes to the delivery here within the track. The flow kind of switches up and changes. Some really interesting lyrics. Black White Boy has got quite an aggressive attitude to it. Normally I like my hip hop kind of a bit more chilled out. This one is quite interesting though. It feels like you're watching a horror film perhaps, like a thriller, and there's some real guts to the delivery here. The beat in La Donda is one of my favourites here. Everything's just really meaty. There's some really nice EQ and tones here to a lot of the rhythms. Vinyl Days by Logic. I say thank you for tuning in. It's always appreciated. It really is amazing, the growth of the channel over the last 6 months, and it's you to thank for that, viewers. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications when we launch those new videos for you. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up like and share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you